Welcome to chapter 10, the book of Ezekiel. The likeness of a throne continues with what Ezekiel is seeing. Amazing, wonderful things that are going to occur. And when they are going to occur is a question, but we are given explicit pictures of these different objects that he sees and things that are going to happen. And here it continues, and he says, "And I beheld, and behold, upon the stereomatos, the firmament above the head of the cherubim, was a likeness of a throne of sapphire over them. And he said to the man," now the he, I believe, is what we will see in we got to find it here, in the first chapter of Ezekiel in 25, it says, "And behold, a sound far above the firmament of the one being above their head was as a vision of a stone of sapphire, with a likeness of a throne upon it," as we said. "And upon the likeness of the throne was a likeness as a form of a man from above. And I beheld as an appearance of molten bronze." And then we go into Revelation and see the same appearance of the person there, which is Jesus Christ. So Ezekiel sees Jesus, basically, and it's above the firmament. The firmament is also used in a sort of a verbal usage. It's called a firmness or confirmation. It's not a, well, if you want to call it a physical thing, but it's more of a usage that's not static. Yeah, it's a confirmation and firmness, and it's used in that way in different places. Under number 4733, you can go through them. In the lexical concordance of the Apostolic Bible, there really isn't that many, but then you'll see about this firmament. In Exodus 24:10, Moses says, "And the things under his feet were as a brickwork of sapphire, and as the form of firmament of heaven in the cleanliness." So this was also seen by Moses, and Isaiah saw the throne. In 2, it continues, "And he said to the andra," the man, android comes from that, "clothed by the stolene," which we had earlier with that robe and sapphire belt around, "enter into the midst of the wheels, underneath the cherubim, and fill your hands full of coals from out of the fire from out of the midst of the cherubim, and scatter them upon the city." So this, he said to the man that was specially clothed, of the 6 that came out with these hewing axes, to enter into the midst of the wheels. And the wheels do not appear in the book of Revelation. Don't have anything about the wheels. The only place then he says above the cherubim here earlier, and here the wheels are underneath the cherubim. The only place that cherubim is mentioned is actually a reference to the Old Testament, and that is in Hebrews 9:5, where it mentions the cherubim being above the atonement seat in the temple of Moses in the Sinai. When they came into the Promised Land. Now, they're called zone, living creatures, but in Revelation, it mentions how the "fill your hands of coal from out of the fire of the cherubim and scatter them upon the city." In Revelations 15:8, it says, "And the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God," because it says here, "And the cherubim stood at the right of the house in the entering of the man, and the cloud filled the inner courtyard." So this was the glory of God. Another thing, as we know, as we go in later, is the cherubim were not the same as what's portrayed in the book of Revelation, even though they're both called zone, living creatures. But the creatures in Revelation have 6 wings to them. And let's go to where Seraphim, where Isaiah sees them in 6:3 here. Well, it's not Isaiah. This is not it. Isaiah 6:2. Oh, here it is, here. And Seraphim, that's a different word, stood round about him, 6 wings to the one. Let's start a beginning. It came to pass, the year of which King Uzziah died, I beheld the Lord sitting upon a high throne, being lifted up. And the house was full of the glory, more or less what we're seeing here, similar. And Seraphim stood around about him, 6 wings to the one, and 6 wings to the other. And with the first 2 they cover up the front, and with the second 2 they cover up the feet, and with the third 2 they flew. And they cried out one another to another, and they said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of Sabaoth. And all earth is full of his glory. So these, the seraphim are singing. It doesn't have that with the cherubim. So I just want to bring out that there is a difference, and you might try to tack on, associate this cherubim here with Revelation, but they're really a little different. Another place will bring it out, another thing that's a little bit different. So anyway, the man was going to the amidst of these wheels, strange things that we'll go into a little bit more here as we get through this chapter. So he entered before me. And the cherubim stood at the right of the house in the entering of the man, and the cloud filled the inner courtyard. Now, what house this is, if this was the house at the time of Ezekiel in Jerusalem, or if it's, as I think it is, of a future period after the beast, or in that temple that is built, because it says, and the glory of the Lord departed from the cherubim into the open air of the house. So the cherubim come, and the glory of the Lord comes into that house, and it says, and the house was filled with the cloud, and the courtyard was filled of the brightness of the glory of the Lord. So far so good. God has come, and his brightness and the cloud, everything is there. The cloud may be like there still could be bright, super bright, but cloudy, some type of a mist. I'm not exactly sure how it is, but the best description is what Ezekiel gives. And the phoni, we have a phone as a derivative of the patrigon of the cherubim, was heard unto the outer courtyard. The patrigon, we have a helicopter, the pater is the wings, and the helio, and the heliocopter is sun, the wings and sun. So they were heard, and they were loud. So it wasn't something that was quiet. It could be like a helicopter. Have you heard a helicopter and been really close to one as it's coming in? Boom, 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 boom. They were very, very loud. So these cherubim could have been even louder because the sound of their wings was heard into the outer courtyard as the sound of God, Shaddai, and Shaddai means Almighty, speaking. And it came to pass in his giving charge to the man being clothed in the holy robe, as we mentioned before, in these robes, holy robe here, a stolene, in the New Testament, in Revelation, they're mentioned as what the multitude of the people that went through the great affliction were wearing. They were wearing these white robes. But this one they were saying, and he was saying, then he said, take the fire from out of the midst of the wheels. Okay, and the trocone trochee is a round lozenge type thing, and English derivative. And the mesu is in the middle, from out of, I got a warning up here, my trackpad. Well, hopefully I'll make it through here. And from out of the place which was between the cherubim, take the fire from out of the midst of the wheels. So there was some type of a fire from out between the cherubim. The wheels. Now I'm not the wheels from out of the between the cherubim. The wheels between the cherubim, or was the fire between the cherubim? Probably the wheels. And he entered and stood next to the wheels. And the cherub, one of them stretched out his hand into the midst of the fire, being in the midst of the cherubim, and the hand being in the midst of the cherubim, and took and put it into the hands of the one being clothed by the holy robe. And that is the man with the robe with the sapphire belt. And he took it and came forth. Excuse me. And I beheld the cherubim having likenesses of hands of men from beneath, excuse me, from beneath their wings. So they had like hands of men underneath these wings. Haven't seen anything like that, but when we get to heaven, we'll know, because all these things are described. So as one pastor at the church I used to go to, describing all these things, he says, very important to understand what all these things are, because we don't want to be country bumpkins that come into the big city and don't know what anything is. And well, people know now as no longer the country bumpkins, because we have the internet and people can see what's going on from all over the place. But I better not tell that story. It was a guy that came in from a farm in the factory I was working, and went to the bathroom, and they had these big round concrete type things, and you step on it and water would come out and you'd wash your hands, and many people could go around it and wash their hands. Well, the guy from the country thought it was something else, and he didn't wash his hands. So, but now people know, but we'll know when we get to heaven. We'll see the cherubim they'll say, that's a cherubim. He's got these hands. He's got 4 wings. That's not. And there's the other one. Seraphim. It's singing these songs. Holy, holy, holy. We're going to know. And I beheld, and behold, 4 wheels stood next to the cherubim, one wheel being next to one cherub, and one wheel being next to one cherub. That's all the cherubs had a wheel. And the appearance of the wheels was as the appearance of carbuncle stone. Lithu, we have lithography, writing on hard surface, and anthrax is a coal, carbuncle black, so it was like a tire, the black wheel. What else? And their appearance was as the likeness 1 to the 4, that is, of the cherubim, in which manner, whenever a wheel might be in the midst of a wheel. Well, the appearance was like okay, I guess that's probably the wheel there, in the midst of a wheel. And in their going, they went in their 4 parts, and they turned not in their going. So whatever way the one would go, the cherub would go, the wheels would go with it, and went that way. The cherub facing the other way would go that way. For unto whichever place the one head looked, they went behind it, and they turned not in their going. So somehow they were moving, but they didn't turn. Apparently they went like that. And, well, if you're seeing me, they went this way or that way or this way or this way, but they didn't turn to go like a car, automobile. And all their sarks, flesh, we have sarcophagus, comes from that, a place where we put dead flesh, humans. And their noti, the notochord, is the backbone, and their backs and their hands and their wings, and the wheels were full of eyes round about to the 4 wheels of them. And so they had flesh, backs, hands, and wings, the cherubim. And these wheels were called Gelgel, which is Hebrew, and in my hearing. And you can look that up in Gesenius. I have the number right down here. If you have a Gesenius, I didn't do it. I was, but I forgot, so I'm sorry. And in my hearing. And there were 4 faces to the one. The face of the one was the face of a cherub. This you can add to the English Derivatives book. Cherub. That's one. And the cherub in the King James of the 4 zone, there was the same was here, and this second face was the face of a man, which was in Revelation, and the third face a lion, which was in Revelation, and the fourth face of an eagle, which was in Revelation. But this one was a calf, the fourth one in the book of Revelation, so they're not the same. And the cherubim departed. This is the living creature which I saw by the river Chebar. So this is what he saw earlier when he in the first chapter, started writing. And in the cherubim going, the wheels went, and these were next to them. And in the lifting away of the cherubim, their wings to raise up on high from the earth, their wheels turned not. And indeed, they were by the ones next to them. So it's all one type of a thing. And that reminds me of the movie E.T., or not E.T., Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which a Jewish man, Spielberg, produced it. And I'm sure he knew about the things in the Bible, so that this thing comes down out of the sky and has all these windows with people inside. It was like one giant wheel and so forth. But this is not on earth. Well, actually it was, wasn't it? It was in there by the temple. Well, in their standing, their wheels stood, and in their rising up on high, the wheels rose up on high with them. So he was re-emphasizing this, the wheels being with the cherubim and their motion. For spirit of life was in them. So now, does that mean it's like a living creature where there's spirit of life, or does it mean that there were beings inside that had spirit of life? And that I don't know. Some type of spirit of life. And the glory of the Lord went forth from the open air of the house. So remember, it was there in the house, came down, and mounted upon the cherubim. And the cherubim lifted up their wings, all of a sudden, and rose up on high from the earth before me, and they're going forth. All of a sudden, he sees them going up. And the wheels were next to them, and they stood upon the thresholds of the gate of the house of the Lord in front. So somewhere the threshold in front of the house, and the glory of the God of Israel was upon them up above. This is the living creature which I saw underneath the God of Israel by the river Chebar. And I knew that they are cherubim, 4 faces to the one, and 4 wings to the one, and having a likeness of hands of men from beneath their wings. And the likeness of their faces, these are the faces which I saw underneath the glory of the God of Israel by the river Hovar, in the vision of them. And these, each of them, went according to their faces. So now we got a description of what these things are, and next we will find out what happens with these cherubim, what happens to Ezekiel as a result of the 10th chapter. Hope you'll join us in chapter 11, our next video seminar, and God bless.